Let the record show, prosecuting attorney Davies began, his voice dripping with theatrical condescension, that the defendant, a woman of slight build and no discernible military bearing, is charged with the gross indignity of stolen valor. She stands accused of impersonating not just a soldier, but a captain. In the United States Army's 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, a ripple of condescending chuckles spread through the stuffy courtroom, the smug sound of people secure in their own judgment. The woman in the defendant's box did not react. She stood perfectly still, her hands clasped loosely behind her back, her posture a ramrod of discipline that was simultaneously invisible and absolute to anyone who knew what to look for. Her face, framed by simple brown hair pulled back without ceremony, was a mask of calm neutrality. She wore plain gray slacks and a simple blue blouse, attire that screamed librarian, not operator. Her silence was profound, a vacuum in the noisy chamber of assumptions. But across the room, on the elevated bench, Judge Miller, a man whose own past was etched in the deep lines around his eyes, leaned forward slightly. He saw past the unassuming facade. He saw the way her eyes didn't just look, but scanned, cataloging exits, assessing the positions of the bailiffs, a low-level, continuous threat assessment that was as natural to her as breathing. The prosecutor saw a fraud. The judge saw a ghost. If you believe true strength doesn't need to announce itself, type competence below. Mr. Davies, emboldened by the gallery's reaction, paced before the jury box like a low-budget actor chewing the scenery. He was a man whose confidence was built on a foundation of loud words and easy targets. Today, his target was the silent woman who refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. The state will prove, he declared, pointing a dramatic finger, that this individual, Eva Rostova, has woven a pathetic fantasy for herself. A fantasy she attempted to leverage for undeserved respect. He gestured to the evidence table, where a single item lay sealed in a plastic bag, a medal on a blue and white ribbon. And this, he sneered, picking it up for all to see, is the pinnacle of her deception. A cheap replica of the Distinguished Service Cross, one of our nation's highest military honors. She had the audacity to carry this trinket, this piece of tin, and claim a legacy that belongs to true heroes. He leaned closer to the defendant's box, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper meant for the whole room to hear. Tell us, Ms. Rostova, where did you buy it? An online surplus store? A pawn shop? Does playing pretend make you feel important? Her only response was a slow, deliberate blink. Her silence was her shield, but in the court of public opinion, orchestrated by Davies, it was being twisted into a clear and undeniable admission of guilt. The air in the courtroom grew thick with a sense of impending, unjust conviction. Davies was preparing for his final, triumphant monologue when a sudden, sharp gasp cut through the room. All heads turned toward the source of the sound. Bailiff Thompson, a burly man in his late 50s, had frozen mid-step. His face, just moments before a mask of bored duty, was now a canvas of sheer panic and pain. He clutched his chest, his radio slipping from his grasp and clattering to the polished floor. A strangled grunt escaped his lips before his legs gave way, and he collapsed in a heap between the jury box and the witness stand. Chaos erupted instantly. A woman in the gallery screamed. People jumped to their feet, their chairs scraping loudly against the floor. Another bailiff fumbled with his phone, shouting, "Someone call 911." Davies, the master of the room just seconds before, was now just another panicked face in the crowd, utterly useless, his authority dissolving in the face of a real crisis. The carefully constructed order of the court disintegrated into a maelstrom of fear and confusion. It was the kind of sudden, high-stress event that reveals the true nature of everyone present, stripping away pretense and leaving only instinct. In that moment of pure pandemonium, one person remained an island of absolute calm. Through the shrieking and the shuffling, Eva Rostova moved. It wasn't with the frantic haste of the others, but with a terrifying economy of motion, each step precise and purposeful. She was at Bailiff Thompson's side before anyone else had processed what to do. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it possessed a quality of command that cut through the noise like a surgeon's scalpel. "He's in cardiac arrest," she stated, not to anyone in particular, but to the situation itself. Her hands were already at his collar, loosening his tie, checking his airway. Get the AED from the wall by the entrance. Now, she pointed a single, steady finger at the younger bailiff who was still fumbling with his phone, the command so absolute it jolted him into action. She then looked at a court clerk, a woman frozen in terror. You. Kneel here. Lace your fingers. Center of the chest. I need 120 compressions per minute. Push hard and fast. I will maintain the airway. Go. The clerk, without thinking, obeyed. A strange and powerful quiet began to emanate from the small circle around the fallen bailiff. Rostova's calm was infectious, her competence creating a vortex of order in the heart of the chaos. The courtroom, from the gallery to the judge's bench, fell into a stunned, awestruck silence, watching the woman they had just condemned as a fraud command the scene with the practiced authority of a seasoned combat medic. The paramedics burst through the doors minutes later, expecting to find a scene of civilian panic. Instead, they found a flawlessly managed emergency. The bailiff was receiving perfect CPR, the AED pads were in place, and a quiet, unassuming woman was calling out rhythmic time checks for the compressions while holding the man's airway clear. They took over seamlessly, their professional eyes immediately recognizing the level of care that had been administered. Whoever started this, you saved his life, one of them muttered as they loaded Thompson onto a gurney. As the bailiff was wheeled out, alive, a silence of a different kind descended upon the courtroom. It was a silence of profound reassessment. Every eye was now fixed on Eva Rostova, who had simply stood up, brushed off her knees, and returned to the defendant's box, resuming her posture of quiet stillness as if nothing had happened. But Judge Miller was no longer looking at her posture. He was replaying the last 5 minutes in his mind. The instant diagnosis, the precise, unwavering commands, the utter lack of panic, the muscle memory. That wasn't the behavior of a fantasist. It was the ingrained reaction of a professional who had seen far worse. He slammed his gavel down, the sound cracking through the stillness. This court is in recess for 1 hour, his eyes locked onto Rostova. His voice, for the first time, held no judgment, only deep curiosity. Ma'am, you will please join me in my chambers. In the quiet, wood-paneled sanctity of his chambers, Judge Miller offered her a seat, which she took, her back never touching the chair. He didn't speak to her. Instead, he sat behind his large oak desk and made a single, secure phone call. He didn't dial a local number. He used a private line that connected to a switchboard deep within the Pentagon. This is Judge Miller, Colonel, retired. Service number 011239. I need to verify a service record under the Patriot Information Act, judicial override. He listened for a moment. The name is Rostova, Eva. Service number is unknown, but she is in possession of a Distinguished Service Cross, serial number 7849er. He paused, listening intently, his pen tapping silently on a legal pad. The longer he listened, the more his expression shifted. It moved from curiosity to surprise, then from surprise to shock, and finally, it settled into a look of deep, profound, and unmistakable reverence. He hung up the phone without another word and sat in silence for a full minute, staring at the woman before him. He finally rose, walked to the door, and held it open. Captain, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Let us resume. The word captain hung in the air, a promise of the storm that was about to break over the assumptions of his courtroom. When court reconvened, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Davies, oblivious, stood with a renewed smirk, ready to pounce on the interruption as a sign of his target's guilt. Your Honor, he began. If the dramatic theatrics are over, I'd like to proceed with. Judge Miller cut him off with a glacial stare that froze the words in his throat. The judge opened a new file on his desk, the contents of which had been securely faxed from the Department of Defense during the recess. Mr. Davies, the judge's voice was low and dangerous. You referred to the decoration in evidence bag 3B as a trinket. You mocked its authenticity. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. That trinket, Counselor, is the authentic Distinguished Service Cross awarded on August 11, 2012. It was, however, awarded posthumously. A confused murmur rippled through the gallery. Posthumously? But the woman was right there. It was awarded, the judge continued, his voice resonating with history, to Captain Ivan Rostova, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. He was killed in the Hindu Kush Mountains after shielding his fire team from an RPG blast. He saved 4 lives with the sacrifice of his own. The judge looked up from the page, his eyes boring into Davies. One of those lives was the team's communications sergeant, who, against every regulation in the book, happened to be his own daughter. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Judge Miller's voice, now filled with a mixture of sorrow and fierce pride, filled the void. The defendant before you is not impersonating a Delta Force captain, Mr. Davies. She is Captain Eva Rostova. He let that statement land like a physical blow. After her father's death, she not only held her position and neutralized the enemy threat, but she also coordinated the medical evacuation for the other wounded members of her team, all while suffering from shrapnel wounds that would have incapacitated a lesser soldier. For her actions that day, she was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor Device and the Purple Heart. She was given a field promotion to Sergeant First Class and later accepted into Officer Candidate School. And then, like her father, she completed the selection and training for this nation's most elite unit. He lifted a single page from the file. Her record reads like a classified novel. Unit, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Status, active, non-deployable pending final medical review. Combat hours, 412. Specializations, advanced close quarters battle, high-threat environment evasion, tactical trauma care instructor. Mission classifications, so far above my own former clearance that this page is mostly black ink. He looked at Eva Rostova, who still hadn't moved. The Army, in an unprecedented gesture, officially transferred custody of her father's posthumous medal to her. It is not a prop for a fantasy. It is her birthright, paid for in blood. Her father's, and her own. He then turned the full force of his fury on the prosecutor. The charge of stolen valor requires the intent to deceive for personal gain. This officer has spent her entire career in the shadows, avoiding notice. Your arrogant, lazy, and insulting assumptions have brought disgrace upon this court and this nation's uniform. Case dismissed, with extreme prejudice. The bang of his gavel was an execution. It was the moment the legend of the silent captain in courtroom 4B was forged in fire and shame. The story didn't just spread, it detonated. It ripped through the local news, legal blogs, and military forums. The transcript of Judge Miller's speech became an instant viral text, shared among soldiers, veterans, and lawyers as a brutal lesson in the poison of prejudice. Prosecuting attorney Davies became a pariah overnight. Faced with a formal investigation by the State Bar for gross prosecutorial misconduct, his promising career imploded. He issued a hollow public apology, but it was too little, too late. His name became a cautionary verb in the courthouse. Don't Davies this case. Junior lawyers would warn each other, a reminder to check your facts before you let your ego write a check your career can't cash. Captain Rostova, the epicenter of this firestorm, did what she always did. She disappeared. After the gavel fell, she quietly approached the clerk's desk, signed a single form to retrieve her father's medal from the evidence locker, and walked out the back door of the courthouse. She offered no interviews, no statements, no parting shots. Her victory was as silent as her defense. The only trace she left behind was a cashier's check that appeared anonymously in the mail at the hospital a week later, addressed to the family of Bailiff Thompson, covering the entirety of his medical insurance deductible. Her competence, her compassion, her legacy, it was all written in action, never in words. Years passed. Judge Miller, long since retired from the bench, found a new calling. He became a guest lecturer on ethics at the state's most prestigious law school. He never used hypotheticals. On the first day of every semester, he would distribute a single, bound document to his students. The official court transcript of the state versus Rostova. Read this, he would command, his old voice still ringing with authority. This case has no complex legal theory. It set no new precedent. But it is the most important lesson you will ever learn. He would then walk the aisles, speaking of the sacred duty to see the individual, not the label. He taught them that competence was a moral virtue, and that assumption was the first step toward injustice. The story of the quiet captain became institutional folklore, a foundational text for a new generation of legal minds, a permanent, searing reminder that the loudest person in the room is often the most ignorant, and true strength lies in the calm, demonstrated ability to perform under pressure. The medal, once dismissed as a cheap tin trinket, was now a powerful symbol in their curriculum. a symbol of a truth that must be earned through sacrifice, a legacy carried not for show, but for honor. Its meaning had been vindicated, not by argument, but by the undeniable character of the woman who carried it. True respect is a currency paid in deeds, not words. It is forged in the crucible of action and validated by the quiet nod of those who know. Captain Eva Rostova never sought recognition. She sought only to honor a legacy passed down to her through blood and fire. Her story is not about the vindication against one foolish man in one courtroom. It is a testament to the silent professionals who form the unshakable bedrock of our society. They are the watchers on the wall, the steady hands in a crisis, the calm voices that cut through the storm of panic. They do not ask for your applause or your accolades. They only ask that you do not stand in their way while they do the work that must be done. Their competence is their creed, and their actions are their only necessary defense. Legacy, she proved, is not about what is inscribed on a tombstone or announced in a courtroom. It is about the unwavering standards that are upheld in your name, long after you are gone, by those who follow. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud ignorance, and where professional integrity defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.